welcome back
Oh
to
my-
Lawfully Chaotic.
He's back.
He's back.
He's
Yeah.
back.
Back from Manhattan. I was flitting around New York City last week. Had a great time, and I started to watch your guys' show, you and Brian, and
Oh, we had so much fun.
I could tell because it was an hour and a half long show.
Yeah, we might have gotten a little carried away. I was like, it's kind of fun when two kind of like very regularly driven DMs, can kind of pick at each other's brain and get a feel for styles and ideas. And so it was like a combination of like just sharing that journey with everyone, but also taking the time to talk about it as well. So it was a lot of fun.
Totally. Yeah, well, you guys needed a chance to catch up with 3 miles wins. He said, "Oh, I'm late." Yes, but I said, "Who's going to be first in chat?" Shunjin, 3 miles. You win. Yeah, I'm going to go back and watch that episode. I figured you guys would have a ton to talk about. It's funny because I'm running less games now, and even we've taken a lot of weeks off just because of scheduling. And I've been really focused on the Critical Role and Darrington Press work that I've been doing, which is going awesome, by the way. But so I think it was good that you guys had a chance to kind of dive deep into that. So thank you for that. So tonight, go ahead.
And on that note, since we're going to talk about zombies tonight, just had an amazing Candela Obscura game that just wrapped up.
Nice.
And it's a full table for right now. I got one player who has some time off, so he wanted to play for a couple sessions, and that's kind of how I'm developing the game.
Okay.
To make it easier for people to come and go, and for assignments to still lead towards the story, but each assignment can have its own unique feel each time.
Nice.
And we just had a great session that involve zombies, but we don't call them zombies in New Fair. So, it was a lot of fun.
They are the otherwise unalive.
Yeah, this strange woman seems to be eating this guy's throat. I don't know why.
It's some kind of new vegan diet fad or something.
But yeah, it was a really cool. It was a dangerous session. They succeeded in the assignment, but near the end of the assignment, they had a couple significant failures that happened near the end. So even though they got what they were after, they had to get out of there. And there was some pretty nasty outcomes from that. So
I should know this, but when is your Candela game?
Thursday nights from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. It's what I run for 3 hours.
Before this. Okay.
Yeah.
I really want to, if you need to slot in like a 1 or 2 session NPC or something like that, I really want to jump in.
Well, we don't really have NPCs. It's like the system doesn't really need NPCs. It's interesting. Like everybody's a character. Like everybody, the players are characters. The people who aren't players are characters. Everything being narrative, they don't really feel like traditional NPCs anymore, which makes it easier to allow people to kind of cycle in and just kind of play for a couple sessions. And if they want to cycle out and maybe come back later, they can. So it's weird. I'm enjoying the system. It's pretty nice.
Awesome. Well, I really want to try it out. Like I said, especially, so they're putting out, I think I can announce this, whatever. They're putting out a soundtrack, Candela Obscura soundtrack.
Oh, I can't wait to get my hands on that.
Yeah, that'll be on Spotify.
That's awesome.
So the three of us that are here right now, you, me, and 3 Miles Down, need to keep that under wraps because I think technically I'm under an NDA. But fuck everything.
That's fine. We'll keep it.
It should be. It should be. It might be released next week. I don't know, but yeah, I'm really interested to check that game out. I think. Actually, more from a player standpoint.
I wouldn't blame you. I mean, I'm enjoying the narrative standpoint a lot more as well.
Yeah. Well, I have to imagine that style fits your under wraps. Are we talking mummies or something? You guys that episode of Big Bang Theory where they're arguing about mummies or zombies?
Yeah. Or are mummies just other zombies? I know, right?
Okay, well, on that note, so tonight we are talking about all things apocalyptic, which I guess stretches beyond just the zombie theme.
Oh yeah.
Could just be end of the world theme, which I think is apropos for these days.
And my Walking Dead RPG content should be on its way pretty soon. So
nice.
I bought all the digital stuff because it's a lot easier for me to, build and develop. So that's on its way.
Okay. Well, I have Morkborg. I will pick up the Walking Dead stuff before next week because I want to delve into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, one of the things I really like about the apocalyptic theme in general is the nature of catastrophe. Like catastrophe, I think, allows apocalypses to come into existence. You know what I mean? And it creates a very kind of unique kind of tension. So whenever I start looking at the available games that I got going on, sometimes I'm like, all right, what kind of catastrophe could I potentially introduce that creates like apocalyptic themes? You know what I mean? And
so so there's two ways to look at that, and I'm actually asking you. So there is the catastrophe that created this, the world in the first place, like zombie outbreak. Okay, so there's already an ongoing catastrophe. Are you talking about on top of that, like, okay, everybody's in this world?
I like to use it as the fulcrum, as the organization of the next phase of a campaign.
Okay.
Especially if the players have a shitty outcome with something. Like massive volcanic eruptions triggered by a fire titan. That's a great example.
I'm not even going to ask.
And it's kind of, for me, it's like, I love catastrophes that happen in the middle or 3/4 way through the game.
Okay.
Because you get this intensity, this gradual buildup of like risk, fear, success, risk, fear, success. And then suddenly, boom, this massive catastrophe kicks off this next phase of the campaign. And it could be zombie driven. It could be demon driven. It could be weather driven. It could be like, there's all these themes that you could kind of reach out to. And then the outcome of that catastrophe has a chance to create apocalyptic conditions.
See, that's interesting because where my head went when we started talking about this, the week or two ago when we decided to do this topic, was that the catastrophe is already there. The catastrophe is the world you're in, and you just have to navigate that world and basically
and that's why
stay alive.
You're right, because that's why I've been dabbling with wanting to run a Walking Dead game, because I feel like that'll help me start crafting narrative game around the apocalypse already existing, which means if it already exists, I can write really deep lore and depth related to that,
Right.
And it starts off in the apocalypse. Sometimes
I didn't think of it.
Fun.
I didn't think of it from the standpoint that you brought up, where it's like, okay, you're kind of here. This is the way the world is. You're settled enough, kind of like more along the lines of Last of Us. Where it's not quite as there's a zombie in every fucking closet, every behind every door.
Right.
And then, to your point, there are new catastrophes that arise out of this situation that you have to deal with. So that's actually, I didn't think of it from that standpoint. That's
it's like, from depending on whatever your flavor of game that you're playing currently, whether it's like Cyberpunk or Shadowrun, or if you're playing high or low fantasy games, or if you're playing any kind of modern game, the apocalyptic background has both an origin as well as it becomes its own outcome. So I think for people that like to create and do a lot of lore and writing, apocalypses really help with that a lot. Like there's so much creative energy that you could use, you know, and I think it helps with the characters' backstories a bit too, regardless of the system or whatever you're running.
Yeah.
Because apocalyptic backgrounds are a lot of fun, and I think that really helps character development from time to time. Have you run something apocalyptic?
No, I never have.
Really?
And and you just
because you classify as apocalyptic.
Well, I was just going to ask you that because you brought up Cyberpunk and Shadowrun.
Yeah, I feel like
those both could fall kind of in the apocalyptic.
Well, I think they experienced an apocalypse and then they came out of it, and then their lore became what it became after the fact. Yeah, thank you.
Gamma World.
That was the
Yeah.
one I was trying to think of. Gamma World is truly, I think, one of the original D&D apocalyptic themes.
Because it's interesting because you say apocalypse, and I mean, even the promos that I put up, your mind first goes to zombies. Walking Dead, zombie apocalypse.
Right.
And it's a lot broader than that.
Well, I mean, a meteor striking a planet. Technically, the Tuesday night game I do called the Shattered Kingdom is based on the founding of a world that was because of a comet smashing into a world and then creating this new, world out of that, and became a new society eventually. So
interesting.
Meteorites could be a lot of, like, comets and meteorites could be a real fun starting point of something, which, apocalyptic themes. I mean, if you read Matt's detail on Exandria, Exandria has the period of founding and then the period of calamity.
Right.
So, calamity clearly is the apocalyptic framework that you could use for Exandria if you want to. I've got 2 games currently running in the period of divergence, which is the end of calamity and the beginning of everything post-divergent, which has been a lot of fun because you could get away with a lot of themes and get away with a lot of content because there's not much written about divergence. Almost all the modern stuff in Critical Role is written around 500, 600 PD and on into their modern context. So I think apocalypses give us that opportunity to play in a playground space that normally we don't have access to.
Well, like you said, I think you stated it very well when you said there's a lot of creative energy that you can release with that. I mean, pretty much,
plus it's an opportunity to use your zombie voices. Zombies are
zombie voice it.
What?
and
you do the clicker,
Wow,
really
that's actually really good.
I do good zombies.
I know that I'm the one that usually does the accents, but I'm not even.
I like that too. The idea of go the Planet of the Apes way.
Yeah.
A post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah.
That is set a certain way, and people come back to that post-apocalyptic world thinking it's still fine, only to experience a very kind of societal change. But that new society has its successes, and therefore you're suddenly the intruder into that new society. I've always loved the Planet of the Apes theme.
Was there ever a Planet of the Apes role-playing game?
I don't know. That's a good
Gary, you've got to know this.
Friggin' question.
Remember the pseudo-Christian book called Left Behind? Even Gramsci? No, I don't remember that. Thank you, by the way, for joining, Andrew. I'll have to look that up because I do not recall that book. So that's an interest. Like I said, that's an interesting view. Well, somebody knows it. I would assume that is all the people that are left behind after the rapture, right?
Believe it or not,
Kirk
drive through.
Kirk Cameron, are you serious? Wow. Well,
I remember that. Yeah.
What about? Did you guys see? You ever see? What was the Seth Rogen James Franco movie where everybody played themselves? The End of the World.
Oh yeah. I've watched that a couple times.
It's fucking hilarious. So fucking dumb, but so hilarious.
Like Hermione Granger. The gal
she was in
Hermione.
Not This Is It. Not This Is It.
Yes, Apes Victorious Game on Drive-Thru Games. Yeah,
see, I told you, Gary.
That's the only one. I just pulled it up and I was shuffling through it, and then I found the drive-thru reference. So
somebody find me the name of that movie with Seth Rogen, James Franco, and everybody else. Danny McBride was in it, who I fucking love. This is the end. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And Google knew.
Yep.
I love that one because
Don't Look Up. Haven't seen that yet.
That is really creepy.
The only reason I haven't seen it yet is because
social media commentary in Don't Look Up is terrifyingly not fantasy.
And that's why I haven't watched it yet, because I don't know if I need to be in the right frame of mind.
It is one of the visually and narratively, it's an amazingly done movie. the
Yeah, but like you said, it
intensity.
hits too close to home. So I think I need
Yeah.
to be really, really fucking stoned to watch that to not
Yeah.
fall into a deep depression. Um,
But the one thing, but that's another thing. Not all apocalypses have to be serious. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
think, you know, This Is the End proved
oh yeah,
that
was...
you could run a game that with that same kind of comedic expectation.
Well, and I know we're going to talk tonight. We're talking in general, and I know next week we're going to talk about specifically Walking Dead and Morkborg,
Right.
and you know, maybe a few others. But oh my God, Idiocracy is now a documentary. You know,
that's
from
not
2016 on. Idiocracy is now a documentary.
it is a documentary. I'd agree with that, especially with Starbucks.
Matthew McConaughey, Dragon Apocalypse.
Oh, Fire.
Fire in the Sky.
No,
Fire,
Rain of Fire.
Rain of Fire. Sorry.
Rain of Fire.
Yeah.
That's a really good one too, because it does a really good job of mixing medieval with modern themes.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I thought was really cool. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah. It's interesting though. I love how we're getting on movies because this is, but
for homebrewers and third-party creators, it's not unusual at all for us to use those environments to create our homebrew at all.
Demolition Man.
Yeah.
Gary, I think we're probably about 4 weeks away from that.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, I think movies drive this theme so much.
Yeah.
I'd love to get Malcolm, Gentleman Game Master. I'd love to get Malcolm's take on this because he is super cinematic driven in the games that he runs. Yeah. If you haven't checked him out, check him out, Gentleman Game Master. It's
still waiting for the seashell.
Yeah.
I just say bad words all the time and just use the paper that gets spat out. It's fine. It's all good.
My mind. So again, I know we're going to talk specifically about those couple of games next week, but it's funny because what I've read so far of Morkborg, to me, that's like the epitome. So you're talking about all the other aspects of how you could introduce a calamity and an apocalypse and move on from there. To me, that's kind of like it's like, okay, you've got a day to live and, anything goes.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Right.
You're going to die at the end. So the more chaos that you can enact is better.
And I think that type of game style is very, very, that type of game style is very much in the vein of Apocalypse. You know what I mean? Like the Crank Personal Apocalypse.
Crank Personal.
It's like, I don't know. It's like the Apocalypse. Yeah. Paranoia.
Yes.
Yeah. And the other one that we were talking about when we were like looking at possible themes and games that pre-existed, there's the Morrow Project, the game Aftermath.
I haven't heard of
1970s game Aftermath, which was a lot of fun. They just had a super, super convoluted mechanical system.
Okay.
That made the combat encounters just exhausting.
Okay.
But it was based on a real project that became a game.
Really?
So there was this guy named Dr. Morrow who believed that he could create places like silos and people could bunker down, wait for the apocalypse, wake up 1,000 years after, and then survive the apocalypse, and then you build a new society. So that
have you watched Silo, by the way, on Apple TV?
Not yet, but I've read all the books.
Yeah, the books were good, and so far the show is fantastic.
And there's a lot of, if you really like the Silo show, a real fun way to run Shadowrun, I feel like, would be in the Silo theme.
Oh, wow.
Where competing silos, and like, I like that whole theme. And the other thing too, there's a lot of fan fiction around Silo, like a ton of fan fiction around
that
Silo.
would be awesome. Like you said, like if you take Seattle, if we're talking about Shadowrun, and that becomes a silo in essence, and then there's this fucking wasteland that you have to venture out to get to other silos. That would be pretty fucking cool.
And Shadowrun theme, I mean, that could be a historical period of its development of Shadowrun. And then like, I kind of feel like the fun part about apocalypse and disaster and catastrophe regardless of the flavor it takes, it allows you to explore historical references of a
How
game
it got
system.
there.
Like how things got where they are. And then maybe you got a campaign going. You're like, hey guys, you want to do a one shot on a period of time of the world that we're in when, things were during its apocalyptic development, and see if we can have some fun with that. I think it introduces some variety that maybe the game needs.
Yeah, and that's and I like that. I like that kind of ancient, almost lost, history type of thing. That's one thing that Silo does really cool is their forbidden artifacts that they can't have because obviously they want to keep. I don't want to ruin the whole story.
Right.
But, Neo Scum. I have not heard of that. Shadowrun podcast. Really? Based in the U.S. Start an indie and try to get. That's cool.
I'll have to add that to my podcast list.
That would be a cool campaign in and of itself. Like you got to get from New York to L.A. Go.
Well, man,
an apocalyptic zombie-ridden cannonball run.
It reminds me of that Steve Austin movie where he rebuilds a Formula One car like an Indy car because gas has been outlawed. So you're not allowed to have gas vehicles anymore because it created a outbreak of like some kind of plague. Like the industrialization of America created a plague.
Okay.
So it's all about this character who decides the hell with that, rebuilds a car, and then drives across the country to prove that he can. Meanwhile, the entire country is trying to capture and like they don't want people to know that they can still drive cars. So you
remember Death Race 2000?
Oh, I remember Death Race 2000. Oh yeah, that's what got me into. Or that was in tandem with Car Wars. The idea of Car Wars for me.
And we played a ton of Car Wars.
That was not Michael Caine. What's the other guy's name? Maximum Overdrive. That was fun too. That was a good one. Well, Night of the Comet. I don't know if anyone's ever seen Night of the Comet. That's an amazing 80s dystopian horror. I love that one, Night of the Comet. When a comet got just close enough to the Earth to wipe out 99.9% of the Earth's population. But some of the remaining population only got a little bit of effect, and they all turned into zombies over time. So they were gradually becoming zombies.
Okay.
And it was just a lot of fun. It's
cool.
A fun movie, Night of the Comet.
I'll have to check that one out too. This episode is rich with notes. I got a whole bunch of homework now.
Oh, I love Apocalypse. I mean, I'm not really a fan of what he's become, but when he did Apocalypto, the movie about the collapse of the indigenous people of Central and South America,
yes,
that was another great storytelling effort about how apocalypses don't care about your reality. When they happen, they happen. And sometimes I think the intensity of that apocalypse can bring in a lot of, re-interest into a dying campaign. Like if you have a campaign that maybe is kind of dying on the vine and you would kind of want to re-infuse it with some new energy, I think Catastrophe and Apocalypse can really help that happen pretty well too.
I really liked Apocalypto on a personal level because not a lot of people know about the extent of the Mayan civilization. And
the Incan and the whole Mayan.
And the levels that they reached and how utterly they just disappeared from history.
Well, I think that's another topic we can tackle.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of civilization in your games. Like, what does that mean? How do you manage it? Like, what when we play all these games, do you take civilization? So that might be a good future topic.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
To tap into.
Yeah.
So,
did you know that the Mayans never used the wheel?
I think I've heard that somewhere before.
Yeah, all of the construction that they did, all of the astronomy work, their calendar, everything, all of that, their whole empire, if you will call it, was done without the use of the wheel.
And what I find interesting too, and I know it's a little off topic, but when they started doing the genetics of what they call the corn migration, the original Mayans began up in Canada and over time worked their way down into Central and South America over many thousands of years, because you could find the corn genetics all throughout North America.
Yeah. And it's pretty,
they've been here a longer. I think honestly that the Western Hemisphere has had indigenous populations longer than European population, much longer. Well, even to the period of beyond Neanderthal. I think Western Hemispheres, Neolithic, pre-Neolithic, definitely had a lot more going on here than European Neanderthal, for sure.
Yeah, I again, kind of a little off topic, but maybe not. I had, having an art major in college, I was required to take, umpteen schmillion hours of art history. And,
right.
And because of the professor that we had, there was only one art history professor. I fucking hated it.
Oh no!
Yeah, all of it.
That's too bad, because I loved art history.
Except for Mayan civilization, which I found absolutely fascinating. And the Mayan
explain
calendar.
Your love for Shadowrun.
That's a big part of it, because they based that apocalypse on the
Mayan calendar, the end of the world calendar.
In 2012, it was prophesized that would be the exit from the fifth age of history into the sixth age, as far as the Mayan calendar is concerned. And the Mayan calendar, just from a mathematical standpoint, it basically, it's designed that it goes almost infinitely into the future and in the past in terms of how it counts, because there are periods of time that it counts, that I think the largest cycle, once you put all these cycles together, is like 20,000 years. So that calendar that they designed, it was meant to basically just, it was tied into the different ages of history, which is that was a big reason that I was so enamored with that.
And every now and then I get a little while I'm writing, I get a little bored, so I'll throw a movie up on one of my monitors while I write. That Nicolas Cage movie, Knowing, popped up in my feed, and I forgot how fun that movie is.
Never heard of it.
It's a real mind trip. It takes you down some interesting perspective. But basically, it's a movie about this kid who has the ability to hear voices, and therefore writes out this chronological timeline of the gradual end of the Earth. So it's all these series of kind of like catastrophes.
Oh wow!
And then the very end of the prediction is these two letters, EE. End of everyone, right? That they finally figure that out. And it's the sun flare is about to come out and destroy the Earth, and it does. It's one of those catastrophe apocalypses that actually comes to fruition, destroys the Earth, right?
Yeah.
But once again, it plays with the idea that we have alien caretakers. So these alien caretakers decide for a very select few groups of children to be taken to a new planet. And it's much more cinematic than it sounds from my summary. But it's an interesting story.
I put it on my list. I'm going to watch these movies, because I really.
Sixth Sense. I don't know. Is that apocalyptic?
I think it was just a reference to hearing the voices. I see dead people, and it's everyone.
Well, and that takes me off to our next topic regarding apocalypses. What's the best way to deliver one? Zombies, demons, devils, ghosts, tyrants, evil societies like the red mages of Thay.
Mortgage collapse.
That's economy, baby.
How about AI? Terminator. There you go. Terminator movies.
Good sci-fi apocalypse for sure.
Yeah.
I even like the idea that it dabbles with the different methods of the apocalypse. Not only does it trigger the nuclear war, but it uses the outcome of the nuclear war to continue to slow burn. The slow burn. Yeah. That's what I like. I like that point. I like slow burn. Like, why are all the toasters trying to kill you? What's going on here? And that slow progressive kind of
They're the flying toasters are finally getting their revenge for that screensaver from the 90s. What was the fucking
for those
screensaver?
flying GIFs, those stupid
Yeah,
GIFs.
the flying
The
toaster. Yeah.
Microsoft Windows toaster.
Yeah. And that's an interesting question. Like, I mean, the slow burn is obviously the easiest way to visualize where did the dolphins go? Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yep,
See ya, fuckers.
Thanks for all the fish.
Yep. I mean, it's kind of easy to wrap your head around the slow burn when it comes to running a game, right?
Mhm.
It's the apocalypse, and there's zombies, and you just gotta survive. But how do you? I don't know. I think it could be pretty challenging to do, like, okay, you are in the campaign, and after 10 sessions or whatever, when it's appropriate for the story, the meteor crashes, and like, how do you deal with that in a game?
Yeah, I enjoy it. And I've done it probably a dozen times over the course of the last 10 or 15 years of playing. Yeah, I like that too. I think ones that are caused by humans have a bit more impact than just something that shows up.
Well, yeah, because I mean, I think it's more relatable in terms of a role playing game.
Yeah. Well, I think in D&D, the slow burn, and related to that statement that was just made about, the effect by human condition or condition of the world, like that humanoid condition. A wizard who thinks that summoning a demon is going to be beneficial and accidentally opens up the gate to Avernus, and all of Legion comes spilling out to take over the world, right? The gods must be crazy.
Yeah.
That's another great one. If you're kind of like a paladin, and you think that you're actually talking to a divine entity that cares, and it turns out you're gradually being, consumed by an energy of chaos, and you're about to unleash the outcome of that. I think there's a lot of introspect that comes from people being the source of apocalypse versus boom, a comet hits it, or a massive earthquake that causes all the land masses and volcanic eruptions.
I mean, with
linking
that, you're right.
It to our involvement, I think, does seem to make it a little bit more dramatic.
It does, and I think there's more impetus for a reason for being beyond just you have to not die. I mean, we all learn from the
Are
Walking
you
Dead.
living or are you surviving?
Exactly.
Kind of theme, yeah.
Right. And I think we all saw with Walking Dead, with the show, that there's only so far you can go with the you just have to not die thing. After a while,
yeah,
fuck's sake,
yeah. I think Walking Dead as a comparative narrative to the storyline that they wrote, that's a great one. I've done that one before. That's a lot of fun.
Excuse me.
I think natural disasters are a great way to pull your party together. I think that's a good idea. Getting people around the natural disaster.
Like, how would you play a meteor, a planet-killing comet strike? I mean, what are you going to do, roll 1,000 saving throws?
Well, I mean, I think it's more about, you don't want to necessarily narrate something that's going to destroy the world. You just want to narrate something that's going to impact it much.
Again, if
every civilization is impacted by it, therefore it remakes society over time, and you're recreating a world with it.
But if it's like a Morkborg type thing, maybe that is the purpose of the game, where it's like, okay, this campaign is going to last 3 sessions. Don't get too attached to your characters.
You have 72 hours till the comet hits. What do you do?
Right, exactly. which actually could be really fun. I think it would be very challenging as a GM.
Play Aerosmith and drill into it. And look really cool while you do it.
Oh my god, that movie sucked ass.
It was so bad that it was fun to watch.
Okay. It's no Starship Troopers. I'll say that. Hey, those guys are
Yeah, I think what they did this summer with Calamity was a good, or last summer, right? It was last summer that they did Calamity, right? They did that summer session
I
of like
think so. Yeah. Yeah.
4 episodes or 5
Yeah.
sessions that
I think
were
so.
what happened during Calamity, and that they played characters that caused it. I
Yeah.
thought that was brilliant.
I mean, it would certainly lend itself to a very narrative arc.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much all. Like I said, I mean, if you are playing during the event, that's
Like I did one where a wizard was trying to master the spell Meteor Swarm.
okay.
And it's a 9th level spell, and they were trying to master it to change the behavior of the spell, and they had a kind of like catastrophic outcome. And instead of it being just like this limited strike on an area, it caused this repetitive, reoccurring slam of like numerous meteor swarms, like covering
like
half
that.
of the world, which
cool.
caused the world to no longer allow arcane casters to exist within the world. So magic became illegal. You couldn't use magic anymore. So you existed in a world that the outcome of catastrophe was barely surviving, and then decided, you know what? The society decided no more magic.
That's very cool. I like that.
And that was a theme I based on a book series that, for the life of me, I can't remember the name of it.
It wasn't Wheel of Time, was it?
No, it was a separate series, a book series, and it wasn't like super popular because I read a lot as a kid. Like,
yeah,
before digital, I went to flea markets and garage sales and thrift stores, and if there was a book that interested me, I just grab it. You spend a dime and then you read it. It's one of the reasons why I know I have a good vocabulary. Like, my vocabulary is advanced because I read prolifically.
Your vocabulary is good.
Am good. I did not read Left Behind. That I did not do. I was not a fan of that theme.
I put that on my list too, just FYI.
I tend to avoid themes that are heavily religious. I'm not a fan of that theme because I have a preconception of it, so I don't get into the fantasy of it. Like, I can't get into the fantasy of it. I'd like to try, but I just can't.
Interesting.
Yeah, please, for the love of God, Brian, don't.
Don't read the book? Or
well, Dune, but I mean, I think
now it's a challenge.
I think with Dune, I hated the first Dune movie. I thought that was a piece of garbage.
It was 80s schlock. I mean,
I was very disappointed in the new Dune. I think they crafted it to force you to think you were going to get something amazing out of it. Now you're stuck waiting for the second one, because that's where all the amazing shit's going to happen. Is in the second one.
I still agree. I don't disagree that, yes, the first movie was nothing but a complete lead up to the second one. Right. However, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
In our modern times, we call that a fucking money grab, baby. Like, it just felt like, you know what? We have a lot of ideas about this movie. Let's throw it out there, beta test it on the community, and make some money while we do it.
Well, that's because they can't, they don't make 4.5 hour movie. I mean, look, Lord of the Rings, but that's diehard fans, because your normal moron isn't going to sit through 4.5 hours unless there's shit exploding for 4 hours and 15 minutes of that. So,
but I mean,
they kind of had to split. I would rather they split a really good story into 2 movies or multiple movies than try to cram it into a Hollywood container and fucking ruin it, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I think another good, one of my favorite ways to deliver catastrophe and apocalypse is with kaiju. The idea of titans and giant world-killing monsters that, roam across the world,
See, case in point.
But,
basically,
I'm very jaded because the way that movie is, I haven't seen it yet. I'm waiting for it to come out on stream. That's my style of movie. Like, I love that style of movie.
The historical.
Yeah, like Soderbergh's. I think it was Soderbergh. Was it Soderbergh that did Dunkirk?
I hated Dunkirk, believe it or
I
not.
loved it.
And I love World War II. For some reason, I did not like that movie
That
at
type
all.
of storytelling is what I've fallen in love with over many decades. I
Yeah.
love 5 threads coming together and telling 5 unique point of views of a story that all kind of come together at the end.
I'm right there with you. Just that was just one case in point.
A lot of people were put off by it.
I don't know why. No, I love that style of storytelling. For some reason, though, that movie didn't do it for me.
That movie was pretty visceral. One of the visceral components of that movie was abject failure the whole way through the movie until the very end. And that's sometimes not very well received. It can put people off because you're like, that was the most exhausting thing I've ever watched, and I don't feel good about watching it. You know what I mean? It's like, and that can leave an interesting. It's kind of like watching. Did you ever watch 1917?
No.
Amazing movie. Well done, well storied, very, very, and it's a movie that takes place in a 24-hour period. So like, it's designed to tell a story in 24 hours. Which if you're gonna do
I've heard that. Yeah. I will watch that, but I think I'll wait for it for streaming also.
That's a very good point.
Very interesting.
There's in 1917, that movie, I think it's a great way to kind of like come up with
is that the one where they're trying to get across no man's land to deliver
a message of not attacking?
I did see that. I did see it. Obviously, it didn't leave that big of an impression on me because
from a storytelling perspective, it's brilliant.
Yes.
And the reason why it's brilliant is that it fits in to a very common theme that you can use in all of your tabletop games or your RPG games. The intense need to do something within a short window of time to save something and prevent something from happening. I think that's a very common thread that could easily be used.
Yeah.
The visual effect of that movie was insane.
Yeah.
But it was another movie that was exhaustive. Like you got to the end, and even though he delivered the message, people were already dying because part of the waves were going across. So you're like, was he really successful? Did he? Of course he was. He prevented from everybody from dying and from whatever the outcome was, right? But you're like, once again, it was such good storytelling, and it was such a visceral, visual story that it felt exhausting. And I think the one bit of advice I get from that is that I don't want that to happen in the campaign that I run, right? I don't want people after 4 or 5 sessions going, well, what the fuck did we do all that for? Not only was that exhausting, but it was only kind of a success. And I'm not feeling like I really did anything for the outcome, So,
and that brings up an interesting point about the apocalypse theme in a role-playing game is how do you skirt that line?
Yeah.
And
hard.
how do you impress upon the players the gravity of that kind of a story, but still allow them to accomplish something?
So allow them enough license to feel good at the end of it without feeling overwhelmed by it. I have been fine-tuning that reality for a long time, and sometimes it works. Sometimes
and again,
it doesn't
going
work,
going back to the forefront of what's on everybody's mind in this theme is Walking Dead. After a while, from season 6 on, it was just like, I'm fucking tired of this.
And I actually think that's one of the reasons why the story writers changed dramatically near the last 3 seasons. The only mistake they made with the last 3 or 4 seasons of the series is they kept, like we talked before offline, they kept reintroducing the same problem over and over again.
Yeah. Here's a group of bad people, and this is,
they're led by a crazy nutter who,
I mean, at certain point, you just got to be like, I don't care if there's only 20,000 people left on the planet. I'm shooting the next motherfucker I see without question.
I think once again, it teaches us a lesson about designing games and designing content and storytelling, right?
Yeah.
To that point, I think they would have had a lot more spin-off and post Walking Dead success if they stopped after the governor. Like, I feel like stopping with the governor was the perfect moment, because Negan could have become a spin-off in a different storytelling principle, and therefore afforded a lot more interest in a different way.
I was okay with the Negan storyline after the governor.
But the Negan was just a homicidal governor.
Yeah, I know.
So it was just, once again, they were setting the standard of just reintroducing the same problem.
Yes. I think they could because they upped the game in it. I think they were able to get away with it once. After that is where I was, when it happened again. I don't know, which one was it again?
Well, I mean, there were the
Whisperers, but that was way later. Before that, there was one in between. But you're right, after Negan, and then they did it again. I'm like, okay, fuck this. That's where my head was like.
In my mind, when I watched that season that ended with the governor, I wanted that final episode to be like a dozen buses and RVs and cars, kind of like very Mad Maxian, driving off into the horizon to start their new stories.
Yeah.
With the one survivor in the background, right? This idea that they're all going to start their new hero's journey, so that when you spin off from that point, your spin-offs can be whatever you want them to be, because you're not setting that bullshit precedent.
Well, let me ask you this.
Rehashing the same theme.
Let me ask you this. In terms of spin-offs with Morgan, what'd you think of Fear the Walking Dead?
I like the first 3 seasons of Fear the Walking Dead. But
okay, then we're on the same page.
Yeah, once again, they started introducing the same problem over and over. And I think that teaches us that apocalypses can be kind of a challenging theme.
Yes. Because
you don't want to reintroduce this kind of repetitive washing machine of content that never really changes anything, And that's why I come back to, the theme as it pertains to a role-playing game. Is it more engineered towards the origin versus it happening?
Yeah, that, but also is it more engineered towards shorter campaigns?
Yeah, I think it would be. I'd agree with you on that one. I think it definitely lends itself towards a shorter campaign sequence. The Babylon 5 model is a great model. I would wholeheartedly agree on that one for sure.
Well, that's the way any good writing should be. Absolutely.
And I think too,
that's why Game of Thrones sucked after they ran out of Martin's story. It just went to shit.
And that's true about an apocalypse. An apocalypse is the end of something.
Yes.
Right? So if you have an apocalyptic moment in a campaign, you better be prepared to introduce something very different after the apocalypse, because whatever happened before it is the end of what came before it. Right. So there's apocalypse in general, right? But you can have minor catastrophes that don't create apocalypse, but might create little apocalyptic bubbles in the world that the campaign is running in. That could be kind of it is a whole new story after that point.
My mouse died. I got to switch mice. Can't find a fucking cord. And that brings up something that's interesting. You could play kind of in the here and now when it's going on, and have a campaign that in and of itself sets up this new world that has changed because of this apocalypse. That will then be your second campaign, which may or may not be a completely different game system or theme.
Right.
But that still could be part of the same mythos.
Yeah.
Like you could do, nothing comes to mind of like a game set now, but pick one, okay? And then boom, there's the apocalypse, and maybe that leads into a Shadowrun campaign.
I got one I can give you because I ran it for 2 years.
What's that?
So I ran a game in Forgotten Realms called Faerun Reborn. But the game started after the collapse of Forgotten Realms. So Forgotten Realms suffered a catastrophic conclusion to the world of Terrell. and the world succumbed to what was called the Rift Wars. And these Rift Wars shattered and tore apart the world and remade it. And very tiny moments of civilization survived, but they didn't come out until like 1,000 years after Apocalypse. So as they went to explore this unknown world to them, they were finding ruins of a place called Waterdeep, or they were finding ruins of a place called Baldur's Gate. So they were, you know, it was called Faerun Reborn because it was all about these isolated pockets of society that were adrift in kind of like warlord existence.
Okay.
So I took a little Dark Sun and put it in Forgotten Realms and created an apocalyptic lore, and they were all living the outcome of that apocalypse after the fact. And the apocalypse was a historical event that was intertwined with their campaign.
That's kind of what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about it even one step further, where, you know, just for argument's sake, you kind of start with D&D and you end up with Shadowrun. Now, obviously not that much, but you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and the fun part about that is I tied it into the 4 other campaigns I was running.
That's
so
cool.
There were 3 campaigns that were running during the time when Apocalypse was about to happen.
Okay.
There was another campaign that was running a couple hundred years before Apocalypse, and there was another campaign running 1,000 years after Apocalypse.
That's cool.
But the Rift Wars were all connected to the idea of time. So when they all came to the conclusion of their campaigns, they all temporarily crossed over.
What was that movie? I think we mentioned it in an earlier episode, but what was that movie? That is one of my favorite ways to tell a story, is connected stories throughout time.
Yeah.
What was the movie?
Are you thinking of Timeline?
No. Atlas Shrugged. No, not Atlas Shrugged. It was Atlas something. World Atlas?
Cloud Atlas.
Cloud Atlas. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the one that you're thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a weird Tom Hanks movie.
It was.
That may be the weirdest Tom Hanks movie I ever watched.
Yeah, not a fantastic movie, but
the story was interesting.
Yeah, I love that. What you just described as, like, you know, these.
So as each campaign concluded, their outcome determined the complete outcome of the overall arc, which was what happened to the world of Terrell when all these campaigns concluded.
Okay. TPT roll new characters in Shadowrun continues. Exactly.
Yeah, or in Gamma World, right? How fun is that to have them to, like, you know? Yeah,
that would be really cool.
I love that because that kind of reminds me of the way we play, like was it Catan? You know, like this kind of like growing societal game. You know, that have outcomes that are generational. You know, I've always loved the idea of a generational campaign. You know, I've always loved that idea.
Sounds like Jason does. I want to
busy. busy. Too busy.
That would be really cool. In fact, on that, I'm thinking out loud here. I'm writing in my head. Of course you are. On that train of thought of interconnected throughout time, but seemingly completely disparate stories. You could run games and you could run campaigns that do end cataclysmically and everyone dies. Mm-hmm. Yet your, call it your soul, down the road, you now are a person in a different, you know what I mean?
Well, now Salvatore tried that with his series. He did the reincarnation series of the post-Drizzt series.
Okay.
So, Regis, the halfling, and then the dwarf all were kind of reincarnated, and that's how he brought them back into his world.
Was it a straight up like reincarnation, or was it kind of like was it a reincarnation in a fantasy term, or?
Yeah, it was the continuation of the Crystal Shard and the whole Drizzt book series.
Okay.
And he brought them back through reincarnation. Is how he did it. But reincarnation is the idea of who you were in a different body.
Yes.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about. Not like the magical spell you're reincarnated, but rather
Well, no,
you
the
know.
magical spell reincarnation has a D100 outcome that could determine you don't come
Right, I
back
know
in your
that.
original body. But
I
yeah,
know.
he did it very much in traditional reincarnation, that you come back,
Okay.
you come back as a different person.
Gotcha. Yeah, kind of.
Like Breath of the Wild.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah. No,
And
I
that would
like
be a really cool way to bridge the gap between completely different genres and systems.
Well,
but
and I
still
think
wanting to continue a story.
Yeah, I think as a way to wrap up the apocalyptic theme in general, is that even if you have any kind of failures or successes in your apocalyptic campaign, whatever's left over becomes your new lore for your next campaign.
Right.
You know, and I think that's one of the fun things about catastrophes and apocalypse as a theme within like campaign settings. I think that helps out a lot.
This still brings me back to Torg, which basically, minus the apocalypse aspect, was basically that, though. You know, the different, well, that was more of a multiverse thing, but I think there's a lot there. You could combine.
But apocalypses definitely lend towards the multiverse.
Exactly.
You know, the idea, and I think to a certain degree, comic books from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and then the eventual introduction of the planar travel system within D&D, those are the original multiverses. You know, those were the original multiverse themes that existed, because let's face it, the original D&D players were comic book fans, and they weren't, they weren't immune to the influence of comic books.
Yeah.
That might be a real fun topic too, like talk about the influence of comic books
on the
in RPGs and TTRPGs. I think
there we got.
If you look at Marvel and Champions and GURPS and what they did, that'd be kind of fun one to look at too.
Oh, let me put that down in our notes. This is it, people. This is creativity happening.
So we did it again. We killed another hour. Brian, we killed another hour.
Cool. I know that I'm not special enough to spend an hour and a half with. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. I was actually surprised that you and Brian only spent an hour and a half.
Oh, we could have gone on all night, but
I know you
timelines and all.
I know. Hold on. Let me finish this. Okay, role-playing games. Done. Wait, hold on. What does Andrew say? You don't have to... 500 Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, I'll start writing a campaign.
Where can we find you, Bri?
Okay. All right. I guess we'll continue this next week when we. Anyway,
I could talk apocalyptic for 4 hours, but I got kids to feed.
Okay. And protect from the zombies. I get it.
Yeah, protect from the zombie horde.
All right, go feed them their brains. You can find me at RPG and Co on Instagram, and now Threads, because
gotta do what you gotta do.
There.
Yeah.
Same thing. Or playrpgandco.com on the interweb site.
Go pick up some of that amazing content you got hosted up there.
Yep, a lot of Jason's content. There are now, well, you sent me a 5th one. There will soon be 5 occult adventures. There are.
I might have sent you a 6th.
Did you?
That might be 6. I think you got 5.
Oh yeah,
already,
that will be 6.
And that'll be 6. So that's probably going to be the last one I write for a little while.
Okay.
I'm now focusing on the city guys.
Cities, yes.
Yeah.
I'm anxiously awaiting those. But there's some town stuff up there. I put my magic items up there.
They look stunning.
Thank you. There are 40. There's 6 volumes of that with 40 magic items. So check those out. And yeah, that's about it. But as always, shoot me a DM. I love shooting the shit.
You can find me over at Twitch, TTRPG Academy. Just go to the Abouts. I'm always playing around the Instagram space, from time to time the Twitter space. I like to support other third-party creators there. Other than that, you can find me here Monday and Tuesday nights or Sunday nights playing some games.
Cool.
TPK.
Tell a story.
Play games.
Be kind. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Bye,
Appreciate
everybody.
it. Bye.